Well, here we are, end of the show. And man, it's been quite a journey, huh? Though I suppose I probably should just get right into it. I wanted to preface this by saying if you haven't watched episode 9, then I don't know why you're here because I'm going to be discussing that thing like there's no tomorrow. Because the episode revealed a lot about Jax as a character and why they act the way they do and who they really are beneath the mask that they put on. So if you want any context of what I'm going to be discussing, go watch that first and then come back to me because this is my take on the events that occur within that episode. Now, having said that, well, I all right. Actually, before I get to my main point in all of this, I should say that yes, Jax is a bad person. I am not trying to apologize for any of the actions that he took or how he handled himself. Because for a long time I used to behave like that too. And yet here I am, like good half a decade, if not more, past when I used to behave like that. And I realized part of the reason why I hated Jax, and by hated, I do mean hated, ED at the end of hate, is because I was looking in a mirror the entire time. And I mean, yeah, sure, some of the details don't exactly line up, but generally speaking, I kind of behaved the same way for a while. I lashed out at people that cared about me. I tried to pretend that I don't care about anything, that nothing mattered. And a lot like Jax, I ended up ruining a relationship that meant everything to me. And at the end of that, I was left with nothing but broken pieces of who I used to be. And when I looked in the mirror, I was disgusted with myself. But ultimately, I tried to change myself for the better, which now proper spoiler territory, if you're still here and you haven't seen the video yet, episode 9 yet, Jax, if they hadn't given up on themselves, probably could have turned things around. Because I think the whole reason they end up abstracting is because, like, over the course of the show, even from episode 1, the crack in his mask starts to show because he sees Cosmo's abstracted, and what's the thing he does? He runs away from it. He literally runs away from the problem that he made for himself. And over the this doesn't really come up again until about episode 4, because in episode 3, well, he doesn't really get to say a whole lot because he's tied up for the vast majority of it. But in episode 4, goes like he's absolutely demoralized and when he goes to talk with Pomni, she looks at him because he doesn't trust him. But like, no, he's being completely honest. He's absolutely deflated. And then at the end of the shift, quote unquote, he puts on his mask of yeah, whatever. This was stupid. Goes out to his car, which I don't think actually would have gotten him very far because it's the end of the adventure. He collapses because he's been putting up this front for all this time. That's like, what does he do with himself now? And I don't really blame the guy because, like, after a point, who are you under the mask if not the mask itself? And like, I have to say, I feel bad for him because, like, continuing from episode 4, episode 5, yeah, episode 5 actually, in the bar, whenever he looks down at his drink while Ragatha is talking, I believe it was, some people have registered that that's a look of guilt, which wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense without the context of episode 9 revealing everything that occurred. And I'll get to episode 9 when the time comes because I want to do this chronologically. And then in episode 6, after the gunfight's kind of said and done, and Pomni actively kind of, I suppose, antagonizes him a bit about all of this, he straight up lies to her and is like, it's very blatantly a lie because he freaks out after he pushes her aside and like that's his mask dropping entirely because like that's oh dear God, what did I just do? Look. And that that was something that, like, after episode like yeah after episode 4, my attitude went from I hate this guy because he's an asshole to hold on, there's something bothering him that he's not discussing, and that very well may be their undoing. And unfortunately, it was. But moving to episode 7, yeah, or yeah, is it episode 7 or like episode 7 or 8, or more specifically episode 8, because I'm having a bit of trouble remembering how episode 7 goes. Episode 8, he freaks out when Kinger starts talking about how Kane was made, which, again, Kane isn't his real name, it's the name he gave himself, but aside from the point, with Kinger talking about how everything was made, Jax freaks out because, oh dear God, this actually is real, and everything I've done had actual consequences. And that, like, how on earth do you live with yourself when you realize that, yes, you're the reason your two friends effectively killed themselves? And, like, that really hits hard with the context of episode 9, because, like, I think part of the reason Jax abstracts is because of that fact. Is, like, the weight of his own actions ultimately crushes him. Or rather, her, but, that's, I feel like that's a little on the side of, I probably shouldn't say definitively her, because, like, yeah, it's a lot of context clues, and, like, I don't know how much more in your face you could have been about it, but it's like episode 9, like, excuse me, I'm still a bit sick, have been since the start of the month, but as I was saying, episode 9 really hits you over the head with the trans connections for Jax, and, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like whenever they were talking with Ribbit about their mother, which, you know, kind of explains why he antagonizes Ragatha a lot, is because Ragatha is kind of the quote unquote motherly figure of the group. So they'd be so Jax, sorry, would probably be a little predisposed to antagonizing her as, like, a sort of cathartic revenge against his own mother, who, well, as we come to realize in episode 9, is probably still out there because, surprise, yes, they're actually all brain scans of real people, and those real people are out living their lives in the real world. But, I don't think that detracts from anything, because these characters, these versions of themselves, have their own thoughts, feelings, opinions, experiences. And, I think, therefore I am. I think I'm real, therefore I'm real in some capacity, right? And I think part of what ultimately does Jax in is the realization that, well, yeah, they're stuck in here. They've they've made themselves into a monster in here, and how can they possibly live with themselves? And unfortunately, at the tail end of all of it, the person that comes to find them is Pomni, somebody that they wanted to be genuine friends with. But, again, how could they possibly accept that sort of friendship when they're the monster? They don't deserve to be loved. They don't deserve to be saved. They're a monster. Who could possibly care about them? Well, Pomni does. And so does everybody else in the circus, because, yeah, you're stuck. That's unfortunate. So you got to make the most of it. And unfortunately, trying for being forgiven starts with forgiving yourself and accepting that you were a bad person and trying to change, but, can't do that if you give up on yourself, now can you? And I mean, I can understand why they would have given up on themselves, because the reality of their situation was too much to handle, which is unfortunate. Because, again, I think given a long enough period of time, everyone would have come around to at least forgive Jax, not not agree with their actions, but at least forgive them for behaving like that because they're young and just had a lot to deal with and they didn't know how to cope with any of it. Which, again, I suppose it's another part of what the show is really on about is learning to handle yourself, your emotions, and how you react to situations. And hmm, like, I suppose that kind of brings me around to Kane because, like, yeah, surprise, Kane's not actually dead. And there's actually a good video that I'll link somewhere that goes into why Kane wouldn't have actually died in the first place. Because surprise, that's not how any of that should have really worked in the first place. But uh, Kane ends up by himself, and he realizes that yeah, he did screw this up. So he has to change to be a better person for the people that he's with. Because otherwise, everyone is just going to repeat the cycle over and over again. And as and like yeah, sure, Kane gets an easy out. He just pulls out the blue AI for whatever that's worth and casts it off into the void, so it's no longer part of him. But that's a kind of a good visual for letting go of a part of yourself you can no longer live with. And like Kane even says it himself, we can't live like this. We cannot exist together. And that's why he cast that part of himself out because that part of himself was problematic. So Kane does change for the better. And what's he do after a long enough period of time, which, could be days, weeks, months, maybe? There's no clear context to it. He tries to, he changes himself and ultimately tries to do something to make up for the pain that he's caused. And once he gets back to the circus, he, well, not outright apologizing, he does effectively apologize and go, I'm sorry, I screwed up. What can I do to fix this? Whereas Jax doesn't get to do that because they gave up on themselves. And, well, unfortunately, Jax effectively, well, kills himself. Because, like, yeah, unfortunately, at the right as the the bullets flying down the barrel, do they realize that I could have tried to fix this, but I gave up too early, and there's no fixing it. That's the reason why they say there's no coming back from it. And despite realizing that, it's too late for them. They've made their choice. There's no turning back from that. Which, you know, I can respect people thinking that, oh, maybe there's still some part of the person left inside the abstracted versions of themselves, but I feel like after a certain point, that version of themselves is gone entirely, like we see with Jax. And because all they're left with is their negative emotions, and the way I've tried to describe it is like imagine your emotions are an ocean. Some days their ocean's calm, some days it's a violent, raging storm out there. You yourself are the captain of a ship, and you have to do everything you can to make sure the ship doesn't go under the water. And sometimes there's nobody around to help you. And when that happens, that's when you ultimately go under the water and you're too far down there to be saved, which is what I think happens with Jax. Because he ignored his emotions for so long and tried to lie and ignore, disregard any reality of the situation that they were in, only for it to come back and bite them to the point that there's no getting past what they did. There's no fixing it. There's no fixing them. And that's really, I think, part of the reason why episode 9 is so focused on Jax is because everyone around them's kind of more or less comes to terms with the situation that they're in and tries to be positive about it because, like, yeah, we're our own people. The outside world's the outside world. It effectively doesn't exist anymore. So why worry about it? Because in the circus, you have all sorts of things you can go out and do, make, and experience. You just have to put your mind to it. But unfortunately, Jax just can't handle that. And that's probably the saddest part about all of it is Jax doesn't get the chance to redeem themselves because they gave up on that possibility, even though it still ultimately existed. And multiple times, Pomni tries to reach out to tell them, "Hey, I'm here. I am willing to help you fix this." But Jax just can't accept it. And that's what I think people fail to understand about Jax as a character is he's Jax as a character is the opposite side of, say, Pomni, who's the other main character per Gooseworks descriptions. And whereas Pomni initially starts off as being unable to accept her reality, she quickly grows to A, accept reality, B, realize what her place in any of it should be, and C, learns to try to help the others around her, regardless of how much effort or if it's even possible to help them is. And that's why she goes after Jax in the first place, is because she doesn't want to give up on them until there's literally no other option. And unfortunately, it came up there was no other option, regardless of how hard she tried. And that's the unfortunate part to all of it. It's like some people can't be saved no matter how hard you try. So at best, you just have to accept that how they went out is how they chose to go out, and they might have been deeply troubled, which Jax very definitely was. And unfortunately, some people just can't live with those troubles lingering in their head and are unable to ask for help because either they don't feel they need it, they don't feel they deserve it, or they just don't want it. And Jax, I feel like, falls under the category of they felt like they didn't deserve it after everything that they've done. And that's the unfortunate part of all of it. But, you know, unfortunately, the past is the past. And now we only have the future to look forward to, and we just have to carry their memory with us. So that's about all I have to say about Jax. Because I was going to go into detail about how all the other characters relate to aspects of Jax, but I feel like uh, if you didn't understand episode 9, then my nit, well, I don't want to say nitpicks, uh, my takes on how each character plays off of Jax as a person wouldn't really much matter to you. But you know what, sure, let's just run through the cast to figure it out. Like I said with Pomni is the opposite side of the coin of they start off as unable to accept reality, but quickly learn to adapt and accept it. Kane is the element of I did something wrong, I need to fix it. Zubul is probably learning to accept your own existence and that, yeah, sure, some things might not work out the way you want, but that's all right. Gangle is probably the most blatant one here in that they have a mask that they put on, and then when that mask drops, how they handle that is entirely separate from each other. And Kinger's, well, yeah, actually, no, Kinger still works here because as we see in episode 9, Jax doesn't take anything seriously, but Kinger, despite his condition of being totally detached from reality more often than not, underneath that is still willing to do the right thing and have an honest conversation about things, as we see in episode 6 and 8. And then even in episode 9, what's he do? He tells the others the truth, and immediately goes to start fixing the circus. And whereas Jax hears that and immediately antagonizes everybody around him, and then freaks out that, oh, hey, Kinger gets to be forgiven, but I don't. Well, yeah, of course you don't get to be forgiven, Jax. You've done nothing to say you deserve to be forgiven. You have not taken any actions to properly apologize or try to fix anything, and in fact, doesn't even bother trying to fix the circus. Because I think at that point, he'd just given up entirely. So what's why bother trying to fix anything? There's no point, right? But you know, that's the problem. There is a point. The point is to make something out of nothing. Because sitting around doing nothing isn't living. And all right, well, I have to say I've run out of steam on ideas on how to continue talking about any of this. So hopefully, my take on things is something you can come to at least understand, if not take into consideration as a possibility of what any of it meant. It's like, yeah, um, oh, that's right. That brings me to one last thing, because again, the show kind of hits you over the head with Jax being trans. Well, I can only hope that they found the peace and freedom they so desperately needed, because they were very deeply troubled. And unfortunately, that crushed them. So, whatever happened to them after Pawnee was pulled free, though, hopefully it's what they need. And with that, thank you for giving me your time, hearing me out, and, well, hopefully I'll see you around in the future at some point. And when that time comes, well, who knows? Maybe we'll be different people, better people when that time comes.